Good morning, everybody. So today we're going to try to get our car ready for winter. What we have is a 2009 Volkswagen Jetta. Doesn't have a lot of miles on it, but it's got a fair amount of rust. Predominantly our winter car. So we're going to go ahead and get our snow tires on. We're going to do a complete inspection of it. We have to send it in and get an inspection sticker for it. So we're going to check all the lights, check everything underneath, make sure there's no surprises that we need to deal with later, and just basically get ready. So hold on, we're going to go ahead and go through the lights and see what we can find. And if we find anything, we'll bring you along for the repair, and then we're going to get the snow tires on. Okay, so we did find a couple bulbs out in the taillights. We'll show you what's going on back there, so hold on, we'll get you set up. So as you may or may not be able to tell in the video, this light consists of two lights, and the one closest to the trunk is actually out. This side is good. So we're going to go ahead and tear into this and see if we can fix this. So on these Volkswagens, there's a little access hole in the back here. We're going to bring you in and show you that. So right up in here, there's a little access hole that opens up, and in behind that is a plug. And they can be a little tricky to figure out on these Volkswagens. There's our plug, and on this one you squeeze the blue piece in towards the back. It'll go that way because the plug will be situated like that. And you squeeze the blue thing back and it releases the plug to come out. Then there's two nuts that hold the taillight in that are 10 millimeter. And there's our taillight. So on the back of the taillight, there's another light, another wire that goes over to the side. That one is two little tabs that squeeze in like that, and then it pulls out. We take that out, and then we squeeze these two tabs up, and the bulbs come out. And we'll see how easy that is to see, but they're pretty black, and can clearly tell that one's burnt out and broke. So we're going to go ahead and change both, just because we're in here. And what we've done is we've gone to our AutoZone, and we've got a couple 7506, and we're going to go ahead and put those in. And these just push down and turn a little bit, and they come out. And then there's little grooves. Let's see if I can get you in there. There's little grooves that the pins on the bulb go down into. Push straight down and turn a little bit, and they lock in. Okay, so as you can see, both bulbs are working, both sides. Something I want to point out on this Volkswagen, and this, I haven't seen this on other vehicles, but it may be true on the newer vehicles. When we changed the bulbs, we had the parking lights on. We put the bulbs in, put the socket back in, the lights didn't come on. I fidgeted with it for a few minutes. I was like, you know, let me go shut the lights off, turn them back on. This thing senses when there's a bad bulb, and apparently it quits putting power to that socket for whatever reason. So even though I put a new bulb in while they were on, it wouldn't actually turn the bulb on until I recycled the light switch. So let's go ahead and get this thing up in the air, give it a visual inspection, and then we'll get on to snow tires. All right, so we're up on the lift now, and we're basically going to just go around this thing, and I'm going to show you what I normally look for. I like to look up in at the springs, make sure the springs aren't broke, look at the shocks, make sure the shocks aren't leaking oil, just general overall. Yep, no broken springs there. It's going to be hard to tell on the shocks today because we just came in from out in the weather. And we just kind of go underneath the car, look it over. The exhaust is getting a little aged on this car, and we may have to change that. When we come up to the front, we're going to look at the CV boots right there, make sure we're going to turn the tire. Make sure we don't see any cracks or grease flung all around. I'm going to look up in here, and we'll look a little bit better at this stuff when we get the tire off. And then we're going to wander across here, look at this CV boot in here on the inside of the passenger side axle. We do have a little oil leak on this Volkswagen. This is the 5-cylinder inline, and it has a vacuum pump on it. And the vacuum pump is notorious for leaking a little oil. It goes through about 1/4 of a quart on oil changes. So we haven't bothered to take the trouble to rebuild it. The same thing here. We're going to basically roll that around and look for that CV boot to be all in good shape. There's one inside up in there that we'll look at when we have the tire off. And then of course the same thing on the coil spring. So the other thing we like to do is we like to grab the tire and try to move it side to side and up and down. We like to turn it, check for noisy wheel bearings. This side has a brand new wheel bearing on it, so we know we're good there. And in the back, same thing. We're going to rotate that tire, and it's nice and quiet, but then we're going to grab it and try to rock it up and down and side to side, make sure everything's tight. So we're going to go ahead and get you set up on the tripod so you can watch, and we're going to peel the tires off this. We're going to check them at the same time, for wheel bearings. We're going to peel the tires off, do a brake inspection, spring shock inspection, and then we're going to go ahead and put our snow tires on. So hold on, we'll get you set up. All right, so we've let the car down where it's a comfortable working height to work on the tire. No sense in reaching up over our head. If it was the truck, when you see us do the truck, we'll keep it even lower because the tires are heavy. So we're going to go around, we're going to pull all the valve cores out. Alright, so now we're going to get you set up so you can watch us run the tire machine and change the tire too. Hold on one second. So one thing that's nice to have is gloves. Tires are wet, dirty. These tires do not have tire pressure sensors in them on this car. They're supposed to, but 2 of them failed and we just haven't bothered to replace them because we keep an eye on our tire pressure. So we don't have to be real careful about where we break the bead down when we run our tool. If you've got a more modern vehicle that has a little light that comes on, it tells you when the tire is low, or it tells you what the pressure is. There's a sensor on the back side of the valve stem. So we want to be conscious of that and not put our bead breaker, right in front of the valve stem like that. And we have to be careful of it up here. But in our case, like I said, we don't have that. Typically on most tires, if you break it down to 1 or 2 spots, you're okay. Some take a lot of work to get them off the rim. Now on our snow tires, they have a directional tread. And if you look at the side of the tire, it's going to have an arrow on it telling you which way the tire is supposed to rotate. So right up in here, we'll bring you up in and show you. Right up in here, I don't know if you can read that, it says direction of rotation. So that's under normal driving conditions, so going forward, this arrow wants to point towards the front of the car. And because we're doing the passenger side of the car, we know that this will want to be out, so that faces the front of the car. So we're going to want to mount that just like that. Basically, bring that in, get it started. First side's the easy side. This side is the one that you got to pay attention. So it'll start on like that. And if you don't keep pushing this down, I'll show you on the next rim, but there's a groove. And if we don't keep pushing this down into that groove, it won't go on. It'll get stuck. We'll end up with a mess. So you have to keep rotating it down in there like that. And it pops right on. You know, I like to unlock mine before I blow it up, just because it is going to bounce some. And I leave my valve core out until I've got it seated, because I get a little bit more volume in there. And now we have to put our valve core in. I like to get it ready on my tool, with my fingers like that before I take this off. And just a note, you heard those pops as it was seating. You want to be conscious how much air you're putting in the tire to get to that. Each tire rim manufacturer will have a number that they tell you, to not to exceed safely. I find that a lot of the new lower profile tires take a little more pressure, but usually in the 40-45 pound range should be plenty. So now we're going to put 35 pounds on it and it's ready to go back on the car. Alright, so you watched us mount all 4 snow tires. You'll notice we didn't balance them. We live on a dirt, mud, whatever you want to call this road. As you noticed inside the rims, right full of dirt and mud. We find that under normal conditions, we don't really notice the difference. The summer tires we do balance because we tend to travel some in the summer. We're on the highway a lot more. But in the winter with the mud and everything packed in the rims, a little bit of weight, we haven't noticed the difference. If we have a tire that's a problem, of course we balance it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look over the brakes. We're looking down in here to make sure we have enough brake pad left. Make sure we don't see anything really obviously wrong. In this case, the rear brakes are fairly new. We're looking at the shock up in here, like I mentioned earlier, looking for oil. You know, we're not seeing any oil residue on that one. Just looking for overall health, no broken springs, etc. So that one's good. We're gonna go check the front one out and get the tires back on this and wrap this project up. So hold on, we'll get you set up front so you can watch. Okay, so same thing up here. Hopefully this is enough light to show you what we're looking for. We're looking for health of the spring to make sure this coil spring isn't broke anywhere. The rubber piece here that protects the strut is broke in our case. We're not going to go ahead and replace it just because of that. You'll see it's got some pieces hanging out. There's no oil. That's the big thing. It's not leaking any oil. The strut looks to be in good shape. The brakes, we have about a 1/2 inch of pad. You always want to check both sides of the pad. The caliper here actually slides back and forth, and a lot of times those will stick and they don't slide well, and it'll wear one side of the pad out a lot faster than the other. So as you can see, the brake rotors have some rust. The pads are probably about 70%. So we'll probably live with this for one more winter, and at that point we may end up putting front brakes on it. But at the moment, everything looks good. The CV boot we looked at earlier looks good. The steering shaft looks good. Everything was good and tight. This is a new wheel bearing. We did just put this in about a month ago. The other side is fine. So we're gonna go ahead and put the tires on and wrap this project up. Now Volkswagen uses studs. So you'll notice there's no stud sticking out of the wheel, out of the car like there normally is. So you have to get your tire up there, line it up, and then put your stud in instead of a lug nut on. So it's a little bit more of a process, I guess you'd say. You get it lined up like that, and there's a rim on the bearing to hold it. And get your lug nut started, or stud in this case. And once you get one in, it'll stay there. Now what we like to do is just bump them once with the impact, and then we'll let the car down on the ground, and we'll get the torque wrench out, and we'll set these to the proper spec the manufacturer recommends. So you have to be careful with the impact wrench. It's got a lot more torque than they recommend on these small studs and lugs and rims. On the big truck, not so much of a problem. Okay, we're back with our impact. This is a 1/2-inch Ingersoll Rand impact, and we have a fairly large Ingersoll Rand compressor that we'll show you. Like I said, we just have to be careful. We just want to snug them up enough that when we set it on the ground, we don't put any stress on anything. Yeah, so what we're going to do now is we're going to set the car down, get the torque wrench out, but we want to take you outside for just a second. Not outside, we're going to open the garage door. You probably didn't hear it on camera, but we're in the middle of a really interesting thunder shower. And it's 3 days before Thanksgiving. Should be snowing, not raining. Hold on, let's go take a look. I'm not sure if you can see that very well, but it's very warm out. We've probably got 2 to 3 inches of rain so far today. And we've had 3 or 4 big claps of thunder, so kind of interesting weather. I'm gonna let you guys watch for a minute while I get the car back on the ground and get ready to torque that wheel. Alright, so we got our Sears Craftsman torque wrench here. Not real happy with this torque wrench. It's only done about a dozen sets of wheels, nothing real strenuous, and it's missing in the teeth area. Something's not quite right in there. We should probably try to get it warranted, but anyway, we're going to go ahead and torque this up. I've set my torque wrench already to the manufacturer's recommended specifications. Now the one thing I do want to mention is on a torque wrench, when you're done with it, when you go to put it back in your toolbox, set it back to 0. Don't leave it up on where you set it, because that will over time make it come out of calibration. And we go until we hear it click. I usually like to check it a couple times, and you'll notice that the sockets tend to stick on these lug nuts because they're quite rusty, like everything here in Maine. So there you go. They do make colored extensions for your impact that are supposed to torque limit, that work for wheels. I've never used a set, so if you have, leave me a comment down below on how they work. And if you got any suggestions for a good torque wrench that won't break the bank, let me know. I'd also like to have a link to that down below. If you got any questions or comments, leave them down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.